Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. Welcome everyone to our Christmas season and Kartika Satsang. I've only been back here for maybe 10 days or so. And this is our first attempt at a live stream satsang. We're going to need Amma's grace to make things happen. Certainly, we're trying to catch up with all the other ashrams. So if we make any mistakes, please forgive me, all of us. I hope everyone had a peaceful and quiet, secluded, isolated Christmas yesterday. The other day, somebody remarked to me that the 1990 Christmas movie Home Alone was 30 years ahead of its time. It sounds just about right. I was home alone all by myself yesterday. Not that I resented that, but it was the truth. These days, we're learning how to savor life without a lot of extroverted activity to stimulate the mind. We're also being forced to focus on those things that are most precious in life. Even otherwise, the holiday season has always helped us focus on what is really important to us. But now, that focus is being further refined to the intangible and subtle things that we value most, like inner peace, harmony, and contentment. For that clear perception, for that 2020 vision, we can all be very grateful. I hope everybody saw Amma's divine message yesterday. I'll share a few points from that. Amma said that we may feel like we are getting a beating from coronavirus, but it is actually a beautiful opportunity to look within. All these years, people have identified with the joys and sorrows chronicled in their favorite movies and TV shows, but had no empathy for those around them. People neither felt peace in the presence of others, nor did they give any peace to others. This is what happens when our awareness is directed outwards. And that's the problem, she was saying. All of us, to some degree, are probably guilty of that. And she said that our eyes are not meant only for looking at the external world, but for closing and looking within. The fact that we are moved at all is proof that we do have compassion and love within us. That's the good news. Now, to awaken these qualities even more, we need greater inner awareness and discernment, which is what the pandemic is helping us develop. That was her sort of the plus side of the pandemic, that she was appealing to everybody. And she spoke about the glory of a life of selflessness, which at this time of year certainly evokes in our mind images of Lord Jesus Christ. Of course, this being Kartika Day, it is so obvious that we should be thinking the exact same thing of Amma. She wove in the theme of the Good Samaritan as well, saying, while we enjoy the Christmas season, let us also ask ourselves, what did I do for others this year? She emphasized the importance of serving Mother Nature as well, and kind words and compassionate actions towards our fellow human beings. So these were a lot of the points that I was really thinking about anyhow. So I will try to expand on these points that Amma has made and weave in some other ideas as well. Now that 2020 is winding down, and as we prepare to welcome the new year, our mind craves something to hold on to, something that can give us hope and faith, so we can persevere through the unknown and uncharted times that lie before us. But when we look around, we mostly see and hear depressing stories about the pandemic and social problems, political problems, and so many other issues. I'm sure there must be people out there who feel that there's just no hope at all. But Spiritual seekers like us should not be looking for their hope in the world anyhow. As our vision is further refined, the mind's craving for something to hold on to should transform into a craving for someone to hold on to. And of course, that is Amma. Amma is our only hope, nothing else. She has always been our only hope, whether we knew it or not. With the present 2020 vision we have acquired, that fact has only become more evident. It was always a fact. So I'd like to share with you a true story that demonstrates just how much Amma should be our hope in life, our faith in life. There was a devotee who went to Puri for an extended stay. After being there for a while, he came up with a new idea for a new seva project, and he was given permission to try it. Soon others took notice of his leadership qualities, his attention to detail, and dedication to his seva. It wasn't long before his new project was a success, and other people became interested, and even a fair amount of donations were generated towards the project. Initially, the devotee was simply happy that his dream of serving Amma came to fruition. However, when people started praising him, offering him things, and trying to become close to him personally, it started to affect his ego. This is something that happens to all of us. So it's a good lesson when you hear what happens afterwards. He became rather full of himself, and after a period of time, returned to his country with a new girlfriend. He got a lucrative job in his field and seemed to be doing very well. But there was another dimension to his life that very few people knew about. Before meeting Amma, he had addiction problems and was only able to overcome those due to the influence Amma had on his life. So when he returned to a so-called normal life, the vasanas that had been subdued in Amma's presence gradually resurfaced. Things just became worse and worse for him. His girlfriend left him, and even his close friends became very worried about him. Until one day, during the North American tour, a devotee friend of his came for darshan. He was in tears while explaining the man's terrible condition. Amma, he is so messed up that he's even considering suicide right now. Amma, please help him. I just happened to be next to Amma at the time, and she immediately told me to call the troubled devotee. Luckily, or we could say in Amma's world, of course, he answered the phone, and when he heard that Amma wanted to talk with him, he burst into tears. He was in such a dark space of self-loathing. He never imagined that Amma would call him. As the devotee's wailing voice came through the phone speaker, Amma also shouted at him, my son, don't despair. Don't lose heart. You're Amma's child." This only made him cry all the more. When he finally calmed down, Amma told him to immediately come to the city where she was and to continue on the rest of the tour. He said that he couldn't because he already spent all his money on drugs. He couldn't even afford a ticket to that place, not to mention traveling with Amma. By this time, the people sitting nearby were also wiping tears from their eyes, and one person, particularly moved by the scene, offered to cover all the man's expenses. The next day, the man arrived and cried in Amma's arms for a long time. But being in Amma's presence was all that he needed to pull out of that perilous tailspin in his life. He continued until the end of the tour, then onwards to India. Soon, he resumed his previous seva in Amritapuri, but with a totally different attitude. This is a story that began seemingly well, then turned into a tragedy. This is what happens to everyone who pins their hope on the world. Ultimately, nobody could save this poor fellow, not even his family and friends. Ultimately, Amma was his only hope, and she was the one who saved his life, concluding the story with a happy ending. And this man finally realized that Amma was his only hope. That is the happiest ending of all. And this story shows us that when life becomes too easy and full of pleasure, the mind weakens and falls prey to the vasanas. And those vasanas are like a pair of glasses that distort our perception and our life values. So we become confused about what we really want and need in life. Permit me to tell a story to lighten up the atmosphere for a moment. One day an angel appeared before a man and said, "Because you have lived a good and virtuous life, I can offer you one of the following boons. You can be the most handsome man in the world, or you can have the most intelligence of anybody in the world, or you can have the most wealth of anybody in the world. Now choose only one." After reflecting for a moment, the man said, "I'll take intelligence." "Intelligence is yours," said the angel, and he disappeared. The man thought for a second and then said to himself, "What a fool, I should have taken the money." What do you think? Intelligence is not enough. That's the point here. Even smart people make wrong choices in life and regret the right choices that they make in life, like this man. Our moral and spiritual compass doesn't come from intelligence. It comes from inner purity. And that inner purity comes from love of God, sadhana, and tapas. These are all the things that people should be doing at a time like this, because we can't do anything else. That's why in spiritual terms, hardship like we are facing now can be a powerful force for the better. The challenges strengthen our mind. They distance us from our weaknesses and restore our spiritual focus in life. Amma says real devotion is to discern correctly between what is eternal and what is temporary. Real faith is surrendering to what is eternal and not chasing the temporary. So we have to ask ourselves, have I been doing the right thing during this time when I had so much free time? Some people have made good use of these COVID times, while others have not. Some people just spent the whole time stressed out. One person sent me an email saying, "I'm starting to go crazy after weeks and weeks of staying at home. Now the dog is looking at me like, see, this is why I chew the furniture. I've been crazy more than you have." However, most of Amma's children are using this time to connect with God and Guru. I know that. For example, I may not be able to see Amma in her usual form, not in person, but she says, "Nature is our home, God in another form." So I'm going to see Amma in nature. Amma also says spirituality is what helps us maintain the awareness that we are not separate from nature. Without spirituality, we lose that awareness. In truth, the progress and prosperity of humanity depends solely on the good that man does for nature. I wonder how many people know that. All the people who are just wantonly pursuing prosperity, they have no clue that it all depends on what good we do for nature. When we slow down and get in touch with the nature around us, we also get in touch with our own nature within us. The mind becomes still, and what was always there becomes evident to us. When we're all suffering, we can understand the suffering of others. And that nature that we become aware of is our humanity. Human beings are supposed to be humane, right? That's the definition of a human being, or used to be, many millions of years ago maybe. So when we're all suffering, we can understand the suffering of others, and that's when compassion and love really flow from our heart. Here is a recent example that I'd like to share. It happened recently, just a few months ago. A woman from Tennessee was working 2 jobs, not particularly educated, but she lost both of those jobs one by one, and then she lost her home as well. Due to a history of drug addiction, abuse, and abandonment, she ended up living in her car, sleeping in the parking lot of a grocery store for an entire year, even during sub-freezing temperatures. She prayed to God. She was a person of faith, but sometimes went hungry for days. One day, she saw that the grocery store was having a job fair in the parking lot. So she watched from a distance carefully, but one of the employees recognized her as the person sleeping in her car in the parking lot, so she called the manager. The manager called the woman over, sat her down, and had a talk with her, then went away. When she returned, she sat down and she said to the woman, "You're hired." The homeless woman said, "I'm what? Me?" She couldn't believe her ears. She just sat there dumbfounded and started crying. The manager hugged her. It's a total stranger. Hugged her and whispered in her ear, "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll help you get back on your feet." Later, the woman described how much they helped her. "When I was hungry and thirsty, they fed me and gave me something to drink. When I needed a pair of gloves and when I needed a shoulder to cry on, they were there for me. That's why I work so hard for them. I do it because they helped a broken girl get back on her feet. I never knew the love that I feel today. Nobody abuses me. No one calls me dumb and stupid. For the first time in my life, I finally got peace." Just think of it. Here's a person who gets peace simply because nobody abuses her, nobody calls her dumb or stupid, and she feels some love. How many people out there in the world, in society, must be like that? These are real life Good Samaritan stories that we can all reenact in our lives. Just think, any one of us could be the person in need of help or the one offering it. Recognition of that fact is much easier now, after all we have seen this year. Once someone asked Amma, "It seems like truth and righteousness have disappeared from human society in Kali Yuga, the dark age of materialism." Amma responded, "It is true that long ago truth and righteousness, Satya and dharma, were more predominant than they are now, and that prevalence made the atmosphere more conducive for devotion and spiritual practices. But Satya and dharma are imperishable. They're indestructible, and therefore they still exist. The difference is that in ages past, people practiced those ideals, but now we do not." Whose fault is it? Right? We cannot say Kali Yuga this and that. It's a very crucial point that Amma is making. It's not a question of whether Satya and Dharma, truth and righteousness, exist or not. It's a question of how many people are practicing them, starting with you know who. Amma is now making the invisible principles of Satya and Dharma tangible for everyone all over the world through her own life, just like Jesus did more than 2,000 years ago. By following Amma's example, that's who we have now, we too can play a role in restoring the ideal human society that Amma says used to exist long ago. Now here's a story about how Amma challenges us to live up to those standards and how we sometimes fail. It's a story about my own story, but recover. So it does end with a happy ending. Most of you already know that Amma goes to Singapore and Malaysia in the spring, at least every other year. Singapore itself has grown into a very large program, but the programs in Malaysia are simply massive. Some of the biggest programs outside of India. In Malaysia, Amma really pushes herself to the maximum because it's only a one-day program, and she wants to embrace as many devotees as possible in that space of time. So, if you're not sure what I mean, by big program, we're going to show you some slides of Malaysia. Are you seeing them now? Yes. Okay. Take a little 3-4 seconds per slide and you'll see just how big the programs there are. Okay? Now you got the idea. You should also be able to imagine just how much abuse Amma's body undergoes during those programs. And the people who travel with Amma are not avatars, Mahatmas, yogis, or anything of the sort. For them, for all of us, the Malaysia program is both exhilarating and slightly terrifying at the same time. After one such Malaysia Darshan marathon a few years ago, Amma flew directly to Sydney, Australia, and she arrived late in the evening. After the Malaysia program, I felt relieved that Amma's program in Sydney was scheduled to begin only the next evening, so we had almost 24 hours. That night, a few of us were enjoying a moment of relaxation in the host's living room, from which we could see the beautiful nightscape of downtown Sydney. We were just relaxing. Suddenly, Lakshmi came out of Amma's room and said Amma was calling me. I sprang up, scurried over to her door, took a deep breath, and went inside. But when I saw Amma's face, it was very clear that she was not happy about something. One of the senior Swamis was also sitting on the floor, looking rather perplexed. I thought, what could be wrong? We're in a wonderful place, a nice house, there's good company, and best of all, we get to rest tomorrow morning. That's when Amma turned to me and said, son, tell the local coordinators that Amma's going to give darshan tomorrow morning. Not tomorrow evening, I'm starting in the morning. And I was like, why? I couldn't believe my ears. I was thinking, how are people going to find out? I mean, there's only 12 hours to go. Clearly reading my thoughts, Amma said, just tell them to get the word out through Facebook and Twitter and all those other things on the internet. And I was like, oh, why did Amma have to learn about Facebook and Twitter and all these things? Who told Amma about these things, right? But really, I was happy to help Amma. But another part of me started to feel a little reluctant to let go of my relaxing morning fantasy. My mind started rationalizing. Amma really should take a break for once. Maybe I should try to convince the Swamis, that program in Malaysia was so intense, she definitely needs a rest tomorrow. Before starting another 3 weeks of touring in Australia, it's too much. So I wasn't reaching out to the local organizers, I was reaching out to my daydreams and thinking how we could maybe force Amma into resting. Good luck with that. Finally, I just said, no, that's not going to work. I'm just going to pray. Gotta pray. I folded my palms and was about to pray, and then I realized, who do I pray to? God? But the Guru is God. The Guru is beyond God. That means I have to pray to Amma, and that's not going to get me anywhere. So I must confess, for a moment I was genuinely disheartened. And I thought, if this is Amma's wish, why should I be fighting it? Why don't I want to practice selflessness? Isn't that why I'm here with Amma in the first place? Yes, it is. So it's not I who am fighting. I wanted to be here. It's not I who doesn't want to practice selflessness. I want to learn from Amma, not from my vasanas. I want to follow Amma's example, not what my mind says. And this brief moment of clarity was what I needed. That's all I needed. Then I could follow Amma's instructions without any inner conflict. I think a lot of you, probably most of you, if not all of you, can identify with this feeling. We all have episodes like that. The problem is that we don't always get those moments of clarity to see through the mind's trickery. This episode definitely taught me a lot about my mind. Deep inside, I knew the right thing to do, but the mind wasn't interested in that. The mind had its own agenda, even though that agenda was conflicting with Amma's will. That was my problem, nothing else. The mind doesn't want what's best for it. It wants something else. So the real question was how to train such an intractable and recalcitrant mind to want what is good for it. That was a big quandary for me, and it was keeping me awake. The next morning, I stood by Amma as she hugged a hall full of overjoyed Australians who were on the receiving end of an unexpected darshan. Amma was so pleased at being able to give so much joy to so many people. But for me, that same question was bothering me throughout. How to train the mind to want what is good for it. I have an avatar in front of me. Even if I were born in the time of Jesus, if my mind doesn't want what's good for it, what difference does it make? You can be born with every avatar that ever lived, and it's not going to help you. So I think a lot of you can understand how I felt. It seems to be a universal problem from what I've heard from other people. At one point, Amma looked over at me. So I took the opportunity to ask her this really pressing question, and her response was tremendously helpful. Devotion is the most practical way. We need the patience, perseverance, enthusiasm, and loving trust of a child. That's the problem. When you're in your head, that loving trust just goes away. We have to awaken the child within us, the innocence within us. That you cannot do when you're in your intellect. That was my problem. To become as expansive as the universe, we first have to become like little children, because only a child can grow. We may have heard this teaching, we may have heard it 1,000 times, but do we remember it when we need to? This advice of Amma's is something that we can all put into practice during the Christmas season. In order to learn from Amma and great souls like Jesus Christ, to live as they did, we need the full cooperation of our mind. To cultivate real devotion and faith, to be a good Samaritan, not just read about it, and to sustain the holiday spirit year-round, we must awaken the childlike innocence within us. As we celebrate the birth of Lord Jesus 2,020 years ago, let us include this prayer to Amma. O Mother, like the child Jesus took birth to live a life of selfless love, may that childlike innocence take birth in me as well. With the innocent faith and devotion of a child, may all of us imbibe and practice the precious lessons that you have come to teach us. In that way, may we create our own hope and faith by living lives of truth and justice, Satya and dharma. Such an inspired life will surely touch the hearts of those around us and spread more powerfully than any virus. Amma, this is my prayer this Christmas. Let that be all of our prayers this season. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all. Om Namah Shivaya. Amma, Amma, Amma. Sadguruvai vandu tita kalitaye, Amritanandamayi devi niye. Sadguruvai vandu tita kalitaye, Amritanandamayi devi niye. எங்களுக்கு வளமெல்லாம் தருவாயம்மா, என்னாலும் காட்டிதவே வருவாயம்மா. சத்குருவாய் வந்து தித்த காளி தாயே, அமிர்தானந்தமயி கார்த்திகை நன்னாளில் வந்துரித்தால் நம்மை கன்னிமே போல காக்க வந்தான். கார்த்திகை நன்னாளில் வந்துரித்தால் நம்மை கன்னிமே போல காக்க வந்தான். கள்ளத்தனங்கள் போக்க வந்தால் நம் கருத்துனில் குடிகொண்டு வாழ வந்தான். அம்மா, 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 அம்மா. சத்குருவாய் வந்து தீர்த்த காளி தாயே, அமிர்தானந்தமயி தேவி நீயே. சத்குருவாய் வந்து தீர்த்த காளி தாயே, மேனியின் நிறமோ கார்மேகம், அம்மா உலமோ தும்பே பூவ போலே. மேனியின் நிறமோ கார்மேகம், அம்மா உலமோ தும்பே பூவ போலே. நானிலம் வணங்கும் தாயவலாம், நன்மைகள் தந்திடும் நாயகியாம். அம்மா, 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 அம்மா. சத்குருவாய் வந்து தீர்த்த காளி தாயே, அமிர்தானந்தமயி தேவி நீயே. சத்குருவாய் வந்து தீர்த்த காளி தாயே, எங்கெங்கும் பார்த்தாலும் ஒன்றன் குலம், என்னாலும் உலக நிலை தாழைக்கும் சீலம். எங்கெங்கு பார்த்தாலும் ஒன்றன் கோலம், என்னாலும் உலக நிலை தாழைக்கும் சீலம். Amma, Amma. Sadguruvai vandu Tita Kali Taye, Amritanandamayi Devi Niye.
Sadguruvai vandu Tita Kali Taye, Amritanandamayi Devi Niye.
Engalakku valamellam தருவாயம்மா, என்னாலும் காத்திடவே வருவாயம்மா.
எங்களுக்கு வளமெல்லாம் தருவாயம்மா, என்னாலும் காட்டிடவே வருவாயம்மா.
சத்குருவாய் வந்து தீர்த்த காளி தாயே, அமிர்தானந்தமயி தேவி நீயே.
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 गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथा, गौरी नंदन गणनाथा.
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 पाशांकुशधर गणनाथा,
पाशांकुशधर गणनाथा.
पाशांकुशधर गणनाथा.
पाशांकुशधर गणनाथा.
गणनाथा
पशुपति नंदन गणनाथा
पशुपति नंदन गणनाथा
पशुपति नंदन गणनाथा
गौरी नंदन गणनाथा गौरी नंदन
गणनाथा
गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथा गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथा गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथा गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथा गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
पाशांकुशधर गणनाथा
पाशांकुशधर गणनाथा
पाशांकुशधर गणनाथा
पाशांकुशधर गणनाथा
गणनाथा है गणनाथा
गणनाथा हे गणनाथा
गणनाथा है गणनाथा
गणनाथा हे गणनाथा
पशुपति नंदन गणनाथा
पशुपति नंदन गणनाथा
पशुपति नंदन गणनाथा
पशुपति नंदन गणनाथा
गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गौरी नंदन गणनाथा
गोपाल कृष्ण राधा कृष्ण
गोपाल कृष्ण राधा कृष्ण
गोपाल Gopala Krishna Radha Krishna
Gopala Krishna Radha Krishna
Krishna Gopala Krishna
Krishna Gopala Krishna
Krishna Gopala Krishna
Krishna Gopala Krishna
Kanaya Gopala Krishna
Kanaya Gopala Krishna
Kanaya Gopala Krishna
Kanaya Gopala Krishna
Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Sri Krishna
Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Sri Krishna
Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Krishna Gopala Krishna
Krishna Gopala Krishna
Krishna Gopala Krishna
Krishna Gopala Krishna
Kanaya Gopala Krishna
Kanaya Gopala Krishna
Kanaya Gopala Krishna
Kanaya Gopala Krishna
Shatru Kurunam Sakabandhavanam
Shatru Kurunam Sakapandhavanam
Shatru Kurunam Sakabandhavanam
Shatru Kurunam Sakapandhavanam
Krishna Vasudeva
Krishna Vasudeva
Krishna Vasudeva
Krishna Vasudeva
Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Sri Krishna Sri Krishna
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 He Nath Narayana Vasudeva
He Nath Narayana Vasudeva
He Nath Narayana Vasudeva He Nath
Narayana Vasudeva
Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare
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 He Nath Narayana Vasudeva
He Nath Narayana Vasudeva
He Nath Narayana Vasudeva
He Nath Narayana Vasudeva
Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare
Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare
Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare
Sri Krishna Govinda Hare
Vasudeva.
He Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
Hey Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
He Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
Krishna 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 Vasudeva.
Hey Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
He Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare.
Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare.
Hey Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
He Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
Hey Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
Hey Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
Nath Narayana Vasudeva.
Gopala Krishna Radha Krishna.
Gopala Krishna Radha Krishna.
Krishna Gopala Krishna.
Krishna Gopala Krishna.
Kanaya Gopala Krishna.
Kanaya
We are all beads strung on the same thread. Each one is different, yet all are the same. Love is the thread that joins us together. Love is the essence of God in us all.
We are all beads strung on the same thread. Each one is different, yet all are the same. Love is the thread that joins us together. Love is the essence of God in us all.
We are all beads strung on the same thread. Each one is different, yet all are the same. Love is the thread that joins us together. Love is the essence of God in us all.
We are all beads strung on the same thread. Each one is different, yet all are the same. Love is the thread that joins us together. Love is the essence of God in us all.
Give your smile to someone lonely. See it light their face. In the heart of deepest sorrow, God will shine His grace. Give your smile to someone lonely.
See it light their face. In the heart of deepest sorrow, God will shine His grace.
We are all beads strung on the same thread. Each one is different, yet all are the same. Love is the thread
that joins us together. Love is the essence of God in us all.
Hold the hand of someone crying. Shy not from your fear. Share the burdens of their heart. Let them know you hear.
Hold the hand of someone crying, silent on your fear. Share the burdens of their heart, let them know you hear.
We are all beads strung on the same thread. Each one is different, yet all are the same.
Love is the thread that joins us together. Love is the essence of God in us all.
Truth can have no country. Love has no caste or creed. May the world unite as one by serving those in need. By serving those in need. Truth can have no country. Love has no caste or creed. May the world unite as one by serving those in need. By serving those in need. We are all beads strung on the same thread. Each one is different, yet all are the same. Love is a thread that joins us together. Love is the essence of God in us all. We are all beads strung on the same thread.
Each one is different, yet all are the same. Love is the thread that joins us together. Love is the essence of God in us all.
Love is the essence of God in us all.
Love is the essence of God in us all.
Love is the essence of God in us all.
Love is the essence of God in us all.
अल्लाह तुम हो, ईश्वर तुम हो,
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 तुम ही हो राम रहीम, तुम ही हो राम रहीम,
तुम ही हो राम रहीम, तुम ही हो राम रहीम,
तुम ही हो राम रहीम, तुम ही हो राम रहीम,
तुम ही हो राम रहीम, तुम ही हो राम रहीम।
यीशु तुम हो, नानक तुम हो,
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 जोरास्त्र भी हो, महावीर 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 तुम हो,
गौतम बुद्ध करी, गौतम बुद्ध करी,
गौतम बुद्ध करी, गौतम बुद्ध करी,
गौतम बुद्ध करीम, गौतम बुद्ध करीम,
गौतम बुद्ध करीम, गौतम बुद्ध करीम।
मेरे राम राम रहीम,
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 मेरे राम राम रहीम।
मेरे राम राम रहीम।
अल्लाह तुम हो, ईश्वर तुम हो,
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 तुम ही हो राम रहीम, तुम ही है राम रहीम,
तुम ही हो राम रहीम, तुम ही हो राम रहीम,
तुम ही हो राम रहीम, तुम ही हो राम रहीम,
तुम ही हो राम रहीम, तुम ही हो राम रहीम।
यीशु तुम हो, नानक तुम हो,
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 योरास्त्र भी हो, महावीर तुम हो,
जोरास्त्र भी हो, महावीर तुम हो,
जोरास्त्र भी हो, महावीर तुम हो,
जोरास्त्र भी हो, महावीर तुम हो,
गौतम बुद्ध करीम, गौतम बुद्ध करीम,
गौतम बुद्ध करीम, गौतम बुद्ध करीम,
गौतम बुद्ध करीम, गौतम बुद्ध करीम,
गौतम बुद्ध करीम, गौतम बुद्ध करीम।
मेरे राम राम रहीम,
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 मेरे राम राम रहीम।
अल्लाह तुम हो, ईश्वर तुम हो, तुम ही हो राम रहीम, तुम ही हो राम रहीम। सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल के, सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल के, सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार मैया, सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार मैया, सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार। छाया है घोर अंधेरा, राह दिखे न मैया, कैसे देखूं मैं तुझको,
छाया है घोर अंधेरा, राह दिखे न मैया, कैसे देखूं मैं तुझको,
छाया है घोर अंधेरा, राह दिखे न मैया, कैसे देखूं मैं तुझको,
छाया है घोर अंधेरा, राह दिखे न मैया, कैसे देखूं मैं तुझको,
कैसे देखूं मैं तुझको माँ, कैसे देखूं मैं तुझको माँ, कैसे देखूं मैं तुझको माँ,
कैसे देखूं मैं तुझको,
ओ माँ सुन ले माँ, मेरी माँ सुन ले माँ,
ओ माँ सुन ले माँ, मेरी माँ सुन ले माँ,
ओ माँ सुन ले माँ, मेरी माँ सुन ले माँ,
ओ माँ सुन ले माँ, मेरी माँ सुन ले माँ,
सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल के, सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल के, सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार मैया, सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले
पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के, सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले
पुकार मैया,
सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल की, सुन ले पुकार। नान्हा है बालक तेरा, कैसे जिए अकेला, कौन संभाले अभी से,
नन्हा है बालक तेरा, कैसे जिए अकेला, कौन संभाले अभी से,
नन्हा है बालक तेरा, कैसे जिए अकेला, कौन संभाले अभी से,
नन्हा है बालक तेरा, कैसे जिए अकेला, कौन संभाले अभी से,
कौन संभाले अभी से, ओ माँ
कौन संभाले अभी से,
ओ माँ कौन संभाले अभी से, ओ पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले 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 पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार मैया, सुन ले
पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल की सुन ले पुकार
मैया, सुन ले
पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार,
सुन
सुन
ले
ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन 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 ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार,
सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार, सुन ले पुकार दिल के सुन ले पुकार। जय जय जगजननी वन्दे अमृतानन्दमयी मंगलारती माता भवानी अमृतानन्दमयी माता सुखदायिनी माता अमृतानन्दमयी मंगलारती माता भवानी अमृतानन्दमयी माता सकलागम निगमादिषु चरिते अमृतानन्दमयी निखिलामय हर जननी वन्दे अमृतानन्दमयी माता वर्षिणी माता अमृतानन्दमयी प्रेम भक्ति संदायिनी माता अमृतानन्दमयी माता मदायिनी मनलयकारिणी अमृतानन्दमयी सततं मम हृदि वसतां देवी अमृतानन्दमयी माता पतितोद्धार निरन्तर हृदये अमृतानन्दमयी परमहंस पद निलये देवी अमृतानन्दमयी माता अमृतानन्दमयी हे जननी जनि मरण निवारिणी अमृतानन्दमयी हे सित जन परिपालिनी जयताम् अमृतानन्दमयी माता अमृतानन्दमयी सुरजन पूजित जय जगदम्बा अमृतानन्दमयी सहज समाधि सुधन्ये देवी अमृतानन्दमयी माता अमृतानन्दमयी माता अमृतानन्दमयी माता अमृतानन्दमयी ॐ जय जय जगज्जननी वन्दे अमृतानन्दमयी मंगल आरती माता भवानी अमृता Sadguru Mata Amritanandamayi Devi ki Om Amriteshwari Namaha. On this most sacred occasion, let us take a few moments to meditate together and dive deep within, as Amma has been encouraging us to do. Close your eyes. Keep your spine and neck relatively straight. And take a few long, deep breaths. Feel your body and mind relaxing further and further with each and every deep inhalation and exhalation. Now focus your awareness on the rhythmic flow of your breathing process. Be fully conscious of each and every inhalation and exhalation. Merge all thoughts into that peaceful flow of the breath. Now as you breathe in, feel the vibrations of the sound. Reverberating in the ingoing breath. And similarly, when you breathe out, feel the vibrations of the sound. Om. resonating in the outgoing breath. Breathe in, feeling Ma, divine love. And breathe out, feeling Om, divine light. It is as though you are replacing your breath with the peaceful yet powerful vibrations of Ma and Om. Ma. Continue to harmonize these vibrations with your breath for some time. Gradually, the vibrations of Ma and Om dissipate and disappear into a deep inner silence. Your mind also dives deep within yourself to a place of utter tranquility. All the thoughts cease, and you can immerse yourself in that place of stillness and silence. Remain in that state for a while. Now we will conclude tonight's program with the usual closing prayers. But tonight, when we chant these mantras, let us do it with full awareness and a very deep intention. Because this is Christmas time and the holiday season, may our hearts reach out to all beings everywhere, especially those people who are suffering. Remember the meaning of the mantras. Lead us from untruth to truth. Let us make that sankalpa for the entire world. From darkness to light. At this time of year, when there is such short physical sunlight, let us compensate with the inner light. In that sense, we are praying to Amma to lead us from darkness to light. And then from death to immortality, let us remember this is not a physical immortality which is impossible. The meaning is that we are identifying with that which is imperishable, the Atman, Brahman. So may we and may all beings come closer to that realization and feel the proximity of a divine presence. And when we chant Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, let us do it 9 times. As Amma instructs, to visualize a constant shower of the white flowers of peace falling from all over the sky upon the entire earth. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. 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 Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year. Good night.